Getting into the conversation, as I mentioned, immigration, where are we? We've heard a lot about the Texas border situation. President Joe Biden, where is his stance on immigration pertaining to the comparisons of the Trump administration? And certainly, where are we overall in regards to immigration right now? A lot of question marks. Certainly a lot of people seeing the visual, hearing the audio, and wondering where we are. Immigration attorney Farhad Sethna, kind enough to join us this morning. And Farhad, let's start right there. Your viewpoint, where are we right now, the current state of immigration in the U.S.?
Well, quite honestly, Ray, first of all, I want to say to you, thank you for being so incredibly prescient on these topics. Immigration, as you can expect, is a real hodgepodge. It has been that way for the last 10 years, and unless Congress acts on reforming immigration, it's going to stay the same, quite candidly. We don't see any overall critical, huge changes in immigration law. What we are seeing are definitely differences in policy between the previous administration and this administration. Case in point is the enforcement of Title 42, the so-called health exception to immigration into the United States. We're also seeing a huge overhaul of the immigration court system right now, but don't expect any changes as far as DACA is concerned or as far as any overall changes to the way that visas are allocated, because those would require either legislation or substantial regulatory changes. So we are probably going to be in a holding pattern for right now. Despite all the optics and the headlines, Ray, what we have right now, which is a muddled hodgepodge, is probably here to stay for a while longer.
Farhad, let me ask you this. We've seen the images of the Texas border. Educate us on where we are in that border, those refugees trying to come in, and where the United States stands and what they are doing for those refugees at the Texas border, Farhad.
Great question again, Ray. The issue is not so much with what our government is doing, but what our obligations are under international law. And as signatories to various conventions on human rights, asylum law, the Convention Against Torture, etc., we have a legal obligation to give those people claiming refugee status a fair hearing at their case. So consequently, what Biden is doing is not opening the borders, as we hear from certain outlets, but rather he's applying immigration law in a way that is consistent with our international and our treaty obligations, as well as our obligation as a leader in the free world that has always been open to refugees, those people seeking shelter from harm's way. What we've done with Haiti is a case in point. Approximately 2,000 people have been flown back to Haiti. However, the vast majority, approximately 12,000, 15,000, as I understand from different reports, have been admitted into the United States with orders to appear either before a ICE office in the United States. ICE stands for Immigration and Customs Enforcement, which will then set them for hearings before an immigration judge on their asylum claims, or directly to an asylum court. So it's not like these people have been willy-nilly allowed to enter the United States. Further, my knowledge of ICE processing and Customs and Border processing indicates that all these people have been fingerprinted, so if they show up in the future and have not done what they're supposed to do, they could be placed in summary, exclusionary, or removal proceedings. So consequently, it's not just people allowed into the USA willy-nilly, but they are allowed in under the auspices of the U.S. government and the law and expected to follow certain requirements. Else, they're going to be shipped right back.
Immigration attorney Farhad Sethna with us. Farhad, some of the images and some of the stories we've seen from that border in regards to children, in regards to isolation, you mentioned human rights. What is the United States obligation in regards to that topic? And certainly with you seeing this situation as an immigration attorney, is it concerning to you?
Absolutely, Ray. It's very concerning to see people being detained. It's always very concerning to see people on horseback, hunting down other people who are trying to flee. But at the same time, as disturbing these images might be, we have to realize, Ray, that we are not a nation of open borders, contrary to what, again, some of the news media portray. We have to control our borders, and we have to allow in people in a judicious way. Only those people who have a potential claim should be admitted. People who are obviously drug traffickers, human traffickers, criminals, who are just trying to game the system, they should not be permitted into the country. And I think the Biden administration is doing its very best to weed out those bad actors or those people who are undeserving at the border itself. Does it result in some chaos? Yes. When you have 10, 15, 20,000 people influxing at one time, it's going to be difficult for any law enforcement. Are some mistakes being made? Absolutely they are. But are we handling it in a way that is much more humane than the prior administration and giving a chance to people to actually make their claims? Yes, we are. I think we should not be proud of the way we're handling things, but nevertheless, we shouldn't be dismayed that we are doing something terrible. We're not. We're doing the best we can with the resources we have, given the unprecedented influx of people, especially the Haitians, over the last week.
Well, Farhad, and certainly you could elaborate here on the history of the United States. So, to your point, we haven't had open borders, even though we're looked at as the land of the free. You can go all the way back to the Ellis Island days when many people were trying to come into the country, mostly from Ireland, European countries like Spain and Poland and the United States, I should say, in Italy and such. But many were turned away at the borders at that point as well. So the borders aren't open, but they're trying to control the amount of people coming in. Now, with that being said, Farhad, what's the latest in regards to the refugees now also trying to come in from Afghanistan with a troubling situation in that country?
Well, I think there's a lot going on there, Ray, that you and I are not privy to, and I would not claim to know about the machinations of the U.S. Department of State or the U.S. Department of Defense or even the CIA. A lot of people are already in the United States. A lot of them are being held in staging areas outside the USA, including air bases in Germany. And I think that the U.S. has done its best under some difficult situations to get many people out of Afghanistan. Are there more people there who deserve to come over here or who are potentially at risk? Yes, there are. We are going to see something, Ray, that's going to be very critical in the next few months and a couple of years perhaps even. How does the Taliban comport itself? If it's going to start summarily executing women or people who are educating children or people who are helping with human rights or NGOs in Afghanistan, they have a severe problem. If things start going back to a more civilized fashion, perhaps there will not be such a dire need for refugees to be resettled out of Afghanistan. So we'll have to see how that happens. But so far, the USA, once again, is doing its best to resettle those people who are here in the U.S. already or in staging areas around the world.
Farhad Sethna, witness immigration attorney. Farhad, let me ask you this. Each and every day of your professional life, you're working with situations of families trying to reconnect or family members trying to come back into the country. How is that process now as we head into late 2021?
It is a mess, thanks to the various bars on immigration that were enacted in the previous administration, and also thanks to our friend who doesn't seem to want to leave, called COVID. And COVID has really messed up our immigration processing in consulates around the world, where we see, a lack of appointment spaces available, distancing issues, health issues, and so on, contributing to the absolute slowdown in immigration processing around the world. So it's very challenging, Ray, to say the least. But what's heartening is that as of, I believe, sometime in mid-November, the Biden administration has announced that people will be allowed into the USA if they have been vaccinated. So that is definitely a very positive move that would hopefully speed up some of the processing, both immigrant and non-immigrant.